question is, Jim's trying to give me a microphone. Do you guys think I need it?
No.
Only if you're recording.
I want to welcome you to our program. The Historical Society is very pleased to be able to put one on. We've never been able to do one in the winter, and this is a topic that we were very close to. And so I do want to welcome everybody. My name is Jean Prouty, and Lucille Campbell and Jim Hoyt. There's the two that work very, very hard on it. And this is Colleen Bushway. She's our Vice President and Secretary, and we are looking for a secretary. So if anyone would like to volunteer, it's not an every week meeting, but we do meet. But we need a secretary. And Colleen, I know, would gladly give up taking the notes. So I'd like to turn everything over to Lucille and Jim. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand or something. And to be clear, we're not answering any questions concerning Evernorth, Champlain Trust, nothing. It's strictly the history of the Round Barn.
I'm Lucille Campbell, and can you hear me? Do I need the microphone?
Would it help?
What?
Maybe it would
It
help.
would help? I was afraid of that. I'm Lucille Campbell, and is it on, Jim?
You can hold it closer.
Yes? Yes?
Yes, you
Yes?
have to turn it on. It is.
Got it, the last one.
It's on.
It's okay?
Yeah.
I hear it now. Okay. Over the last few years, I've been collecting things about buildings in Grand Island, so I already had some Round Barn information. But when that became a topic of conversation, I started gathering more. And what you'll see today is a lot of what I've gathered. Jean said we weren't going to talk about Evernorth. The only thing I'm going to mention is if any of you are here that signed the petition to allow the Historical Society to be an interested party, I heard from DRB yesterday and they've approved it. And the surprising thing was that anybody that signed that petition is now an interested party, which surprised me. There's like 39 people. So that's the only news. Okay. These slides, anything that you have that you want to mention about, just go ahead, raise your hand, and we'll talk about them as we go instead of waiting to the end to talk about them. Back up, Jeff. This is Fay Hill, and that's basically where the Round Barn Farm began back in 1793. It looks a lot different now than it does in this picture. This was taken in 1907. So this is the beginning of the Round Barn. Adams Farm was what they called it in the beginning, and then it became Faywood. Okay. Joseph Adams was the first one that settled on that property. He was an American Revolutionary War veteran. He came from Connecticut. He was not one of the first settlers. He came about 10 years later after the original ones came. And he had one lot, which was about 62 acres, that he took for himself right there. There was a lot of debate about whether he really should have it or whether it belonged to someone else, but he ended up with it. He was there, built a log cabin for his family. He had at least 8 children. So it must have been a sizable log cabin. Then in 1825, he built the brick house, which is still standing, and we will see it in a minute. His son, Samuel, was the one that inherited that property, and between the two of them, they added 4 more lots, so that by 1868, they had about 250 acres there on that Adams Farm property. Okay? Unless somebody's got a question. This is where the original farm was.
Excuse me, listen, I think they're wondering if you could, they just can't see the slide. Show.
Where do I
If you
need
can
to
see
go?
this side, that'd be
That,
helpful.
yeah, that's perfect, yep.
No.
Oh, a little more, sorry.
I'm getting caught up in the cords.
Thank you.
Okay, can you see it now,
I
Jen?
think everyone can see it, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
now I can't see it. Okay, if I get on the other side. I can't see it from the glare.
Can you look at his computer? Stand here and look at the computer?
I can see it well enough.
Okay.
This property that we're talking about is right here. This
So
is,
Sally, you gotta pull.
this is Faywood Road, right across here, which is still there. Still Faywood. This is where his property was. Is right here at the base of Faywood Hill, or Fay Hill. And I think some of you recognize this building. Janet, you recognize this?
Oh, yeah.
And you live in it now, you said?
Yes, yeah.
This
Last
is-
night, we were trying to figure out what we're gonna do with the fire, and the two boys were on top of that cupola on the deck. I couldn't find them.
This is how the house looked quite some years ago. Joseph Adams, the first one, lived there for a few years later in his life. His son Samuel lived there until his death. Sophronia was his daughter. She inherited it. She lived there off and on with her husband, her second husband, Reverend Charles Fay. At that point, it became Sophronia's estate. And these people are ones that were the caretakers and lived there. I think Frank Bullis should be in here too at some point in this line, but I couldn't find when. And then, as Art Goodrich told me, it was vacant for years. They used it to dry oats, if you can imagine. And at some point in the 1950s, the Goodrich family was living, or part of the family was living in the tenant house just west of this building, which burned. So they cleaned up the inside of the brick house and went back to using it as a residence. And after that, it was Fernand Dupre and Mark Horgan Jr.'s family. And I believe you may have been the last ones to live there as, Philip, you were the last ones to live there?
Yeah, Dankingers, I don't.
They didn't live there.
No, I mean, they obviously only been on one after, but they didn't live
That guy just did
Okay.
it for a little while.
there. Dankingers was there for a little
For
while.
a little while?
I can't.
Lucille, this lady here lives in that house now. Yeah, I met Lucille before.
Oh, Joan.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah, yes. But after Denkinger sold it, I don't know who lived there. I didn't go any further in any land records, because at that point, it was split off from the Round Barn property, and I
It was
can't,
split, but John and Betty, somebody lived there. So they had all the nativity scenes,
Oh,
where the
yes.
kids drove around.
Yeah.
Morris. John and Betty Morris.
Yeah.
That was the highlight of our young life, going round and round, to look at the nativities.
was that before Denkinger bought it?
After.
After?
After.
Yeah, they took care of nativity.
This is one of the families that lived in the Faywood house. It was about in the 1890s. It was Carlton Griswold is the baby. Henry Griswold was the one that was the manager of Faywood. His father lived just south of Faywood and leased all of the Faywood property. His son Henry was the one that was the manager. And I believe that when that property was sold, it was when Henry Griswold went to Griswold Road and bought a farm there, and the Griswold family lived there until recently. There was a windmill that was built on that property. I don't know who the A.C. Griswold was, I have no idea. But it was probably Major Davis's money that built that windmill. And we will meet Major Davis in just a minute.
Do you know where on the property the windmill was?
No idea. That was the only notice I found of it. I don't have any idea, any more than I know who the man was that built it. And this is a common view, it's even on the placemat that Miriam Lee brought in. I thought the quote was appropriate. This is Major Alexander Davis. He was an interesting man from what I can find. He was a Civil War veteran. He ran for Senate in New York State and was defeated. And apparently after that, he got a little perturbed with the United States and decided he was going to become a British citizen. At some point, he started buying land here in Grand Isle. I found a notice that he had come to his property on Ladd's Point, and this was prior to 1891. So he had property here at that point. Then he began buying up the Faywood property, the Ladd's Point property, a whole lot. You can see here. You can see this yellow section. This is what he ended up with. It went all the way from the north tip of the island, down past the drawbridge, across and over to the east shore. So that was all of his property. He made his millions in railroad and coal, and he didn't mind spending the millions. What else? I can't see what it says here. He's the one that financed the building of the round barn in 1902. And you can tell at that point he was a citizen of England, but he was back and forth between there and here, and had his manager, who was E.J. Parker, proceed to build this round barn. And I'm not going to go into the history of round barns in general, because I think Jim is going to do that later. But the round barn was built by people who lived in Rushton, New York, and Mariah. Well, I can't see what we're doing here. Yes, the Davis High School is probably one you haven't heard of before. Grand Isle had a high school for maybe 6 or 7 years. At one point, it was called Davis High School because he gave $500 toward it. It didn't last long. My grandmother graduated in the only class that ever graduated from there. I think there were 5 in the class. And now we come to E.J. Parker. We could do a short program just on E.J. Parker. He was involved in everything. He started out in Georgia, Vermont, doing creameries. He set up a creamery in Georgia. He set up a creamery in Milton. He came to Grand Isle and he was involved in setting up one of the creameries, and I don't know if it was Sampson or Pearl, but he was involved in a creamery in Grand Isle. He was a deal valve separator agent. He traveled around this part of the country as an agent for that. And then around 1900, Major Davis asked him to become the manager of that whole Faywood farm. He was manager for more than 25 years of that place. In the meantime, he organized the Grand Isle Grange. And in his later years, after he, quote, retired, he operated one of the feed stores here in Grand Isle. He was also involved in the church and in the schools. He was we could do almost a program on him. So this is just a very brief notice of him. This is the house where he lived, and you recognize that, Marie?
That was Marie's house.
Yes. Marie is here, she owns that house now, she lives there. This picture, I think, was taken about 1909 or 10. He built it earlier than that, he built it in 1892. Some of his cattle, and the picture on the far side is of the house shortly after he built it, with a barn in the background.
And I was going to say his wife, Julia Adams, came from that Adams family a couple slides ago. Her father was Nathan, who was maybe a brother to the woman who inherited.
Nathan was a brother of Samuel,
Okay.
so he
Yeah,
would have been an uncle of the woman.
right. So it was a different branch, but he married an Adams, and I think they bought the farm maybe before he built the house from his wife's family,
Yes,
which was
I
the
think so.
Adams. Yeah. Yep.
Those families were connected in multiple ways.
Yeah.
The Adams and the Parkers and the Bullises and there was the Fays. They either were connected by marriage or blood relation, or they just simply knew each other from, church or whatever. But there was a lot of connections between those four families. These are clippings. I can't see what they are. The first one, you may have to read them to me. The first one is about the farm buildings and what wonderful. Let's see. This is how they've been painted so that they were just the best looking ones in the county, and that there was going to be a circular barn erected. And right here it mentions that E.J. Parker is the manager and his son-in-law is the superintendent. Well, his son-in-law was Frank Bullis, because he married E.J. Parker's daughter, Carrie, right?
Yep.
Would that be Ed Bullis's parents?
Parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ed Bullis's parents?
Ed's parents, yes. Yeah. This is the notice that I ran across just recently, just by chance, from Brushton, New York, that announced that E.J. Parker had been in town trying to find somebody to build his barn. And I thought, well, why did he go there? I mean, Brushton is west of Malone. Why did he go there? Well, it turns out that Frank Bullis came from Brushton. His father was a carpenter. His father was building barns in Brushton. So I'm sure Frank said to his father-in-law, go talk to my father. See if you can get him to build the barn.
Just out of curiosity, the two articles have different diameters for the barn. The first one says it's going to be 94 feet diameter. The second one says 80 feet
Yeah.
diameter. Do we know what it ended up being?
I think it was 80. It's 80 or 82. There's a slide in a minute that will give the dimensions. But you're going to find some other mistakes in these clippings. I mean, it's no different now.
I know.
The newspapers aren't always right.
It's 84.
It's 84? Okay, here is the clipping about the Mammoth Barn that's being put up in Grand Isle. This one says it's going to be 84 feet and 55 feet high. And the top of the silo is going to be 65, and I think that we're going to find different figures in a minute on that too. They've already put two levels of it up, and it says a force of 10 carpenters Now, we found the names of 6. We don't know who the others were. This is an interior picture that shows part of why the barn was so unusual. And I don't know enough about construction to really explain all of this, but these were about 4 layers of laminated boards that were put together in a circular form, which is called a purlin plate. And that's part of the uniqueness of the barn. These are the carpenters. They were from either Brushton or Mariah. James Fisher was the main carpenter. Will was his son. The 2 Manning men were his nephews. So they've got a good family business going on there. Here is Mr. Bullis, who was Frank's father. And I don't know where Will French came from. I couldn't find any relation, but he was there, plus others. So it may be that you can see up on the top, there are some men sitting in the rafters. It's probably some of those men.
I couldn't sit on top of that building, I know, my legs would be shaking.
Janet Horrigan is here, and she told me a couple weeks ago that she had read that some of the carpenters were Italians. And I thought that was odd at first, until I remembered that the railroad had just gone through here in 1900. There were a lot of Italians that were brought in to work on the railroad. I mean, not just laying track, but building. So it's very possible that the ones that Janet had heard were Italians were part of that railroad crew that stayed on for a couple of years and worked on the barn, but I haven't found anything that actually says
So
that.
it's so funny. My maiden name is Fisher, and I just found out today that it was involved.
Maybe you're a relation. This is the picture that created all of the excitement about this barn. It was published in several national magazines and newspapers. It was one that was sent in by E.J. Parker. I don't know whether he took it, but he sent it in along with a long article discussing the barn. And these measurements are the ones that came from the article that he sent in to the newspaper or the magazine. I think this one came from Hoard's Dairyman. So what does he say it was? It was 85. And the silo was 60. The silo was 60 feet high. Now, he said the stable was 75 cows. I think in the last years that it was operating as a dairy, there were 62 from what Ron Prouty said that he worked there. Do you remember, Phil?
What's the question?
How many stalls?
How many
How many cows?
We had 60. 60 stalls. Ronnie should know.
He said 62,
He said 62.
Wow.
2 are alternates.
Lucille, where is the silo?
The silo, you can't see it here. It's right in the center.
It's right in the middle,
It's
okay.
right in the middle, but you can't see through all of the timber work where it is. But there's another picture soon that will show that silo. This is after it was completed. And this is the manure track arrangement that he had put in. And this again was in a national catalog. It's Loudon Overhead Carriers. Loudon was a factory that did a lot of farm equipment. And I think Jim's got some in what's coming up. And this is E.J. Parker's endorsement of that manure carrier.
Where was it? The manure carrier, was it?
It was on that lower floor, and it was, I don't know whether it was down low or where it was in there.
It was low.
It must have been
Where the
low.
cow stalls were, and it was right
It
behind
was
it.
right behind it.
Yeah,
Was it still there when
when we
you,
farmed it, when we farmed it,
It was-
so
it was still there?
It was a source of tons of problems for my parents, because going in a circle is not natural for some metal tracks, which are used to going straight. But there'd be the cement wall and the walkway behind, then the manure, then the cows with the stanchions hooked up, then another area where my parents would feed the cows around, and then the middle was the silo.
Mhm.
But I've always been curious if anybody ever went up into the cupola. I don't know that.
Your kids didn't?
Kids must have, but I don't know.
We wouldn't tell.
Did you ever hear if anybody could get up into the silo?
I don't know. There's one picture that, it looks like there's a ladder, but it looks like it goes to the silo and not up into the cupola. So, all I found about the cupola was that it was ventilation.
Well, the cupola was part of the silo, though, correct? It was basically the top of the silo, the cupola.
I don't know, Phil.
I think so.
No,
It's
that's
right there.
true. That's true. I worked on that building in 1981 for about a year. And it is at the top, and I spent about a month right before we left. And if the building, I know you don't want to talk about Evernorth, but if that building does come down, I put those bunny ears that are on the top.
You're the one?
Yeah, and I would like them. Not just me, a couple other guys too. But we had staging set up in the center of that silo. And, go up, had to replace everything that was up there, sling, everything. It was all rotten. But yeah, that's the top of the silo.
So the cupola is the top of the silo.
It is.
Is there a place to stand up there?
After we broke down the staging, I don't think so.
So it was just wide open from where they finished filling the silo up to the cupola
Yeah,
with the ventilation. Were there 3 vents or windows up there?
there were louvered, doors, I think, I forget how many. But we had to rebuild them too. It was a few years ago, I can't remember how many.
You see, on the slide before this one, it said litter track around the edge of the, was that the track?
Yes.
Was that the litter track? On the other, this side?
That was.
Yeah, right
This
in
this
there.
is manure shed, and here's the track, all the way around here.
But see, it
It
says
says,
litter
it
track.
says litter
Very on the
track,
wall.
right there,
Yes,
yeah.
we put in the track when we were there on the outside.
The inside one says feed track. And then the outside
And
one
then
says
there's, this is the litter track, and there's the gutter.
I can tell you the cows came in the very outside, like any farm, they crossed over, the gutter. They crossed over a gutter into their stall. So, yeah. I don't remember it giving us problems, but I was pretty young.
Was it in the gutter?
Yeah.
The manure, the
Yeah, it was like a gutter in any barn, even a straight barn, but obviously it was.
Right, but was the track in the gutter?
Yes, the track was
The
in.
track was in the gutter,
You swept the manure into it,
and it just
to go out.
moved around.
It had to go backwards, it had it swung like any other track, even in a straight barn.
I don't know.
Like I said, you mentioned.
Luciana, Ronnie said the track was hanging automatic. The track was hanging.
Ronnie says the track was hanging.
The track was hanging.
Yeah,
It was hitched to the
The bottom of
ceiling.
the gutter. It was in the bottom of the
Shoveled
gutter.
into it. When he was there, he said it was hanging from the ceiling.
On chains.
Well,
He was there with Bubby in the 60s, remember?
there was another track.
Me too.
There were
One that falls the tree.
It was a very easy for feeding, but it was not easy to work in milking cows. And then we put the gutter, because we just got so sick of working on it and took it out to the back end for the manure spreader.
Well, if it's the same one that he installed in 1906, it had a lot of use.
No, it wasn't, we put in the new one, so I don't know
So
about.
the one in 1906 is probably the one that hung from the ceiling and then,
Could be, I don't know.
probably, and then they put in the one that went through the gutter.
Well, there also was a hay trolley, which we'll see in a minute. That may be the one that was hanging.
We didn't use the track. We used the airplane.
Okay. This is the interior of the silo.
We can't see what's over there.
Yeah, that's the genius, isn't it? The structure just amazes me for that time period. Absolutely.
This clipping is interesting because even in 1903, there was competition between South Hero and Grand Isle. Because somewhere in South Hero, there was a big silo built. I don't know, Terry, if you know where. But the one in Grand Isle was even bigger. And this is from Burlington Clipper, from probably Grand Isle Star was the original newspaper. And the silo in South Hero would hold 250 tons of fodder, but the one in Grand Isle was, let's see, wait, 450 tons. That's a lot of silage, 450 tons. Now, this is what I suspect he was describing, E.J. Parker, when he mentioned that he had the round track and the carrier for unloading hay. I suspect it was something like this. This is the same company that did the manure track that he put in. So that may be what you remember as being hanging. And this is the original roof that was put on. Of course, it's a slate roof now, but this was the original one, this Rex Flint coat. And as far as I can find out, it was tar and probably some asbestos mixed in with it, with felt, and it was, they put it under heat and high pressure. Somebody's nodding up there, vacuuming, yes?
That's what
That's
Flint
what it
coat was. Yeah. It was asbestos shingles.
I can't hear you.
It was asbestos shingles, probably. Flint coat made tons of asbestos roofing for years.
I think some of it also came in rolls
Yep, probably.
rather than just shingles. It came in rolls, which probably would be easier to put on a round barn roof than shingles. And again, E.J. Parker has given his endorsement of this Flint coat, Rex Flint coat. Those ads were in papers and newspapers, magazines all over the country. They didn't all look like that, but they all had the round barn as part of the illustration. And his endorsement is down here. You can't read it from this, but right there is his endorsement.
You know, one of the things that it says on that endorsement is that, let's see, Fiberx coat is, it's made of wool.
Yeah, I think it was wool felt.
It's resistant to fire. I lost the line.
Made of long
Yeah.
wool.
Made of long fire, chemically treated. Which is really interesting. It's almost to the bottom.
Yeah.
There's a roof.
They offered to send you a sample so you could test it with a red hot coal to make sure that it was really fireproof. I'm sure it wasn't anything that they would want on a barn at this point. This is a picture, thank you, Janet. There's the original house. This barn is still standing, I believe, Joe? It's still standing?
Yes, yep,
And in the background, you can see the round barn.
but there's no porch on the front of the house.
No, the porch is gone. It's been gone. I don't remember ever seeing a porch on that house.
It was there when we lived there. We lived.
Was it?
And Leslie Ward lives in, moved that granary up to where they do, Leslie Bob living, just to the left, right
Is
there.
this is the granary that was moved?
Yeah. Leslie lives
Right here?
That's my house.
That's what?
That's my house.
That's your house?
We dragged it over on town meeting day 44 years ago, and it broke down in front of Aunt Mert's. And luckily, Aunt Mert had a circular driveway, and it broke down right in the middle, so cars could the sledge they were dragging it on, wore through it, and they fixed it.
Did you get it there in one piece eventually?
Yeah.
That's neat. All right, this is George G. Wright. He's the one that purchased the estate after Major Davis passed away. He was a land speculator, mostly out in the Southwest. And he really owned hundreds of thousands of acres, not just in the United States, but in Mexico. I don't know why he came to Grand Isle, but he did. He bought all of that property that was on the north end, plus some others. I found something just recently that I didn't put in here. He apparently was not very honest.
Really?
Because in Kelso, Texas, there was a hoax city or town set up by this George Wright. He built a, let's see, where he built a stage-set town complete with a hotel, a general store, and a schoolhouse. It was never occupied, except when carloads of tenderfeet were brought out in the real estate men's Winton automobiles, and given the illusion that the area was well populated. The hotel was occupied solely by these prospective newcomers. The school was never actually used. And customers were seen at the store loading merchandise they had purchased when buyers were around, only to return the goods to the shelves when they left. There was also a large red barn filled with ears of corn, shipped in from Iowa. This man made millions of dollars speculating on land in Mexico and the Southwest. Let's see what else. He had big plans for that acreage on the north end. He was going to improve the landing so that the steamers could get there better. He was going to build more barns on the property. And this says he bought all of even the produce that was on the farms, including a 12 horsepower thrasher. This is Faywood again right here. He owned all of this way up in there, and some on this side of Faywood down in here. I think he owned all the way to where the Island Villa, which is now the lake house, is. So he had this whole end of the island. This is what was to become Ladd's Point Farms, and it was 5 farms total. Can't see what it says here. This says it was 6 separate parcels. There was Wyman Gordon Farm, which was up on Ladd's Point. Ladd's Point Farm, which was also on Ladd's Point. Ariel Center, I have no idea where he was. It included the Faywood Farm, the James Hyde Farm, and the old Adams Farm, which was E.J. Parker's. That's all on the, those three are on the east side. Let's see, there's some other important things. A new set of buildings complete will be built on the center farm. The Gordon Farm, there was going to be a new barn, 100 by 36, with an addition, a house for the farm manager, a summer home on Ladd's Point, and he's the one that built the big stone house that's out there on Ladd's Point, on the point. That was Wright's. These were not going to be dairy farms, these were going to be beef farms. I don't know that that ever came to be. This is not the one that says that he's paid $15,000 for all of that land. I think we missed that on the last one. He bought a new Buick truck for E.J. Parker to use on the farm. And he was making many improvements.
Actually, going back to, you made a comment about the stone house on
On the point?
the, right, and I'm curious now, seeing this last name, I grew up knowing that house to be designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. The mansion, we always call it the mansion.
I don't know who designed it. I have somewhere the name of the people that built it. That was an architect out of Burlington with his company. But I don't know that Frank Lloyd Wright had, whether he designed it or not. Which one was that?
The mansion way out on the point.
The stone, the big stone house
Robert
out on the
Jim
point.
Lambert's mansion.
I have that information somewhere, Marie. I
I'm
just
just
don't have
curious
it.
now,
Not-
seeing this name associated with the point.
Yeah. I don't remember the name of the man that was the architect. But I don't think it was Frank Lloyd Wright. I think it was somebody from Burlington.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. After Wright died, it was that all that land was owned by a syndicate. Eventually, Horace Corbin bought that property, and what we know Horace Corbin from is Lake Champlain Transportation Company. He owned that for years and years. There's very little about Corbin and the property in Grand Isle, but he owned all of what was the Wright property. He didn't own it for very long, probably less than 10 years. He also was a land speculator in Mexico, owned thousands of acres in Mexico. The only thing we really know about Corbin and his connection to the round barn is the fact that he's the one that put the slate roof on. It's the only thing that apparently anybody has found about what he did with the round barn. He changed the siding and he put the slate roof on. And this is the 1,100 acres. This is the property that he bought there on the end of the island. It says he bought the Wright properties consisting of 1,100 acres in 5 farms and one of Vermont's most pretentious summer homes. That's the stone house that's still out there. It's one of the pretentious. The furnishings of the large residence were also included. And he spent summers there for maybe 10 years. Skipped one, Jim. Back up one. There. James Lambert was the one that bought it from Corbin in 1940. And some of us that are old enough here, we probably remember it being called the Lambert Farms. And maybe remember Jim Lambert. He was an heir of Lambert Pharmaceuticals, which was known for Listerine. That family had millions of dollars as well. He was a veteran, World War II, and bought those 5 farms from the Wright estate. He didn't live here permanently. He was back and forth between here and Florida and here in New York. But he was here for many years.
Do people here remember Jim Lambert, Susan?
Yeah, they must.
Because I remember the name very well growing up.
Yeah. I don't think I ever met him, but I met his son, so, you know. it's-
And of course, we also did Lambert with the stone house on that home.
Lambert lived in the stone house on the point.
And like I said, very said, we always call it a mansion when we were every night.
Yeah. It was a mansion.
It is.
Around 1957, Jim Lambert got to the point where he wanted to divest in all of that land that he had. He started by selling off the farms. He sold the Red Barn portion of it to Fernand Dupre. He sold the one that was E.J. Parker's to Goodrich's. He sold the one that was the main road we called the Baker property. He sold that to Charlie Baker. I think it was Goodrich's that were living, or one of the sons that was living there at that point. But Charlie Baker bought that one. I don't know who bought the other 2. Fernand Dupre didn't stay there long. He was there about 3 years before he sold everything out. He sold all of his cattle, he sold all of his equipment, and he left. The interesting part about this auction ad is the very last section of it, where it says, "Come and see the only perfectly round barn in this part of the country, with 62 tie-ups, barn cleaner, and a 22 by 70 silo in the center. Farm of 330 acres, 226 tillable." Let's see the rest. "In addition to the unusual round barn, many other good buildings will be offered for sale. Come take advantage of the unusual opportunity to purchase good dairy replacements, excellent equipment, and see some of the most beautiful lake country." So, Fernand Dupre sold it, and Janet's family bought it. And here's the announcement from Kathleen Carey.
Never saw that. An announcement from Kathleen.
From the suburban list, Kathleen Carey's news was that the Horrigans had purchased Faywood Farm and moved their cattle there. And then Mr. and Mrs. Bud Horrigan and family had moved into the house on Fay Road.
Do you have any more subsequent slides about that?
No, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
See who that Booties party was?
It was by the Bullis family.
I'm Janet and Bub's oldest daughter.
Jim, why don't you back that up one?
I just wanted to tell the story because I just think it's so amazing. But my parents had 6 kids in 8 years. I'm the oldest. They're young. We're in my grandparents' house, big family, like the great-grandfather, grandfather. And they moved next door to a trailer. My father's farming on my grandparents. Now they've got 3 kids. Okay, getting a little crowded. Build the house next door. Now they got 4 kids. So they just moved into this house. The round barn comes up for sale. My mother and father are working outside, and the real estate guy drives by. And he says to my father, "Hey, the round barn's for sale." And my father goes, "Well, if you sell this brand new house of ours, maybe we'll buy it." Okay. So the guy comes back, "I got a buyer for your house." My mother goes to the hospital to have her 5th kid. My father shows up at the hospital, and he's got the papers to sign for the round barn, but she's having a baby. So, she has the baby, they go to move into the round barn. $36,000 in 1960. They got a house, the round barn, probably 7 outbuildings, 365 acres. And my mother's having a nervous breakdown. Bob, how the hell are we gonna pay for that? They did have another child, my brother Phil. So here they are with 6 kids, working their asses off, and she's sweating it out because they paid $36,000 for a house, the barns, and 365 acres of land. I just had to tell that story.
Jim, back up to the auction. I think maybe the man that stopped out there and said, hey, the round barn is for sale. I don't think it was Fernand Dupre. I think it was these two guys, Alan and Donald Clark,
Clark's Real Estate.
that they had bought it.
That was only 65 years ago, and she remembers his name.
They bought it from Dupre, and then you bought it from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you actually know if that's Dupre or I've always said Dupre.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've just been interested in it name, whether it's Dupre or Dupre.
One of his daughters was in school with me, and I think they pronounced it Dupre. But who knows?
I just was curious.
Okay, Mary Lee, you want to take over?
Well, a lot of the cows would stay across the road toward the Lover's Lane. And we would bring them over across the road and bring them in the barn. And because it only had 60 stanchions, we would put 60 cows in. They would milk those in. Then how many did you say, Mom?
16 or 18.
Well, we'd have to let out 20 cows and put 20 more in because we couldn't milk them all at once. So that's what they did. They put in 60, let some out, bring some more in.
Who were the 2 kids in the picture?
Not
65.
You notice they're all jerseys though.
Right.
We had Jersey cows, and my father would get 4 Holsteins every year so he could sell them for taxes.
I don't think that's still because Phil doesn't have dark hair.
Oh, I think there's a hat.
It's too early for Phil.
Yeah, I'd be 3 years old.
But again, on the right-hand side, that far building is Leslie's house.
But that's too big anyway, the kid is, because Matthew was born when we got it in 1960.
That looks like a 5-year-old, doesn't it?
Yeah. They said it could be a 5-year-old.
So this is the round barn right here.
And then, can you back up one slide? This says Helen Ladd Willis, obviously Roy and Cindy's grandmother, and Mildred Horkins' sister, and Aunt Frances Phelps' sister, the
Right.
3 sisters.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was our grandma Horkin, Glad Horkin.
And they all dabbled in dating, all 3 sisters, obviously all time they dabbled.
Bubba was Mark.
What?
I said Bubba was Mark.
Yes, Bub was Mark Jr.
His father was Mark.
Oh, go the other way one more time.
Oh,
No, on the other picture, not that one, the next one. The winter of 1970. The roads were closed. I was in South Burlington High School, and they wanted us to sleep in the gym. And I said, no way am I sleeping in the gym with boys. So I hung out and took the last bus. And only a few of us were on that bus, and the bus got to the Grand Isle store, the Island Hub. And Mary and Martin took us all in at the Grand Isle store because nobody could get down any of the roads. And the National Guard had to come and plow the roads so that my father didn't have to dump his milk out.
Right?
So
Wow.
so they could come in and get the milk.
I remember us sitting in the gym at South Burlington that year, and Doug and Billy Tudhope, that he taught there, and they came and got me and took me home with them. Remember Mary and Sandy and
Oh,
Jim
they
and
lived in
Tudhope?
South Burlington.
They lived
Laurel
in
Hill.
South Burlington, and he
Yeah.
was from North Hero originally. You probably all know that, the history people. His father had the store, which is now Heroes Welcome. Yeah. So, and then I heard, the next day I heard that everybody got home eventually, but
Eventually,
we
yeah.
were supposed to be sleeping in the gym that
Yeah.
night.
And I thought it was a cool deal because Mary and Martin that owned the store said we could pick out whatever kind of ice cream we wanted.
Any more stories?
What?
More stories?
I'm sure.
We'll think of them one time.
Okay, so in 1962, S.T. Denkinger bought Faywood Farm. I don't know whether he did anything with the cattle.
Yes,
Did he?
he only kept peppers. And I should say bad things about Esty, he was a nice person, but he didn't understand farming, and he didn't want to be told. He left, I don't really remember, but it was close to 100 peppers loose in that barn. And they were dying, walking on it, other ones walking on them. It was a disaster.
He raised Black Angus too, right?
What?
He had Black Angus.
Yeah, he got out of
Did he have Black Angus?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I remember, he said
Probably.
It wasn't milk because
there was no money in dairy farming, there was money in beef cows. That's what he basically turned it over to. And then, yeah, it was a bit of a disaster.
Yeah.
Frank Willis came up, Grandpa Frank, came up and tried to straighten him out. You can't leave him in there without fans running and all of that. One day he was broke down baling hay, and I went out to help him, and he didn't want a woman to tell him what to do. I said, all right. Love to broke down and fix that. I think he, I don't know really what I want to say, shouldn't say anything that's not nice. He kind of ruined a lot of the history and stuff around ours. He sold it.
She said he sold it.
Yes.
Well, it wasn't what he thought it was going to be.
Right. It didn't make a farm around him. So he sold the, well, it's a listing, over 200 head of cattle. That's a lot of cattle on that farm. He sold them, he sold his equipment, most of it, and then he decided, Jim, did we skip a slide? Back up a second, please. Yeah, he continued with the crops. He was selling alfalfa and selling grain. He raised grain and was selling that, but he was out of the dairy or the beef business. He eventually sold it all in 1975, and by then he was beginning to think about developing it and starting to sell off lots along, I think, Lover's Lane is where he started selling it off.
we bought our piece of property from him, where the granary is right now. He used to say,
So
property
this-
grows hellacious alfalfa. Too bad you can't eat the scenery. All the time.
He was a minister.
This was the beginning of the end of the farming at Brown Barn Farm. And by 1980, there wasn't any farming going on there. These are just general pictures. Esty Denkinger took this. I don't know whether that's Esty there in the picture or his sons or whatever, but this picture was one I found that he'd taken. This one is the silo, came out of Vermont Life magazine with an article about Vermont Brown Barns.
How was the catwalk?
I was gonna
I
say, where'd you go?
don't know.
At the top?
Yeah, there's a catwalk, but where does it go? Does it go up in the cupola?
No, it went around the top of the barn.
And you know that, right?
Right
I
here?
never got up there. That picture of the barn on the left is on Facebook. And everybody that I have different people, nobody can figure out who the people are.
No.
anybody here know?
Now, the only thing I know is that S.D. Denkinger took it because it was a picture that he sent into
Oh,
Vermont Historic Preservation when he was getting ready to
Marshall.
apply to change that into senior housing.
Tom.
but that one way on the right, girls, boys didn't wear long hair in those days. That's a girl on the right. I don't know, I can't figure it out.
I don't know, you can't blow it up and see what it is. This is another picture that Esty took. I'm assuming that's up on the second level, where all the hay was. It's really hard to see. That looks like the silo, and this looks like what was left of the hay there.
It was called the hay
in the
mound.
barn.
That's where we stored hay, around.
Well, that catwalk, because we fed mostly hay, and that catwalk, we'd go up and we would push the bales. I don't believe we placed the hay, we just dropped it in.
No, we just
So
took the
we'd go up
kicker.
and we'd push it, push it down, make more room, I do remember that. And that was one of the reasons catwalk was there, and obviously it was there to service the silo.
You can see, it looks like there's a ladder going up the side.
Yeah.
That's just one more picture that shows some of the farming. That was taken by Alan Stratton in 1969.
My husband was afraid of height. That ladder going up the side was not good for him.
It's just two more views.
Anybody else did it for John either. Susie said it wasn't good for John and her husband either. Ronnie Browdy probably not either.
He did. He was younger then, he could have made it.
Two more views. That one was taken by Esty, this one by Alan Stratton. These are ones that the state took when they were doing the,
That's the horse barn and the pig barn.
Are those still there?
no. This is the horse barn?
Yeah, the front was horses, then there was a pig with a big metal trough to do whatever you do with dead pigs. That was a chicken farm where they had chickens, and then we had the granary. And most of those are kind of where the parking, like, Evernorth has the place where they pull their cars under, all those things with the length of that area.
Okay, so that's where that is.
Now, Art Goodrich told me the other day that the tenant house that burned in 1950 was on the west side of, he said, of the horse barn. So I'm assuming it was on the west side of this barn.
You know what, I remember vaguely as a kid, foundation. You could still see parts of the foundation, I remember that now. So yeah, it would be on the west side of that, but 1950, of course, I wasn't.
No,
But tile.
the foundation could have been there.
But do you remember a fire?
I don't remember a house either.
Well, the house burned in 1950.
Right.
And then the housing project. And some of these headlines could almost be today. This is a timeline of all the different owners of that property, starting from Joseph Adams in 1793, Samuel Adams, his daughter Sophronia, and there's Major Davis, George Wright, Horace Corbin, James Lambert, the Duke Perry, and I made a mistake in the spelling. Look at that. Mark Horgan, Esty, and senior housing. This was just a little Vermont humor that I found. Inquiry has come to the department as to round barns. The why, the when, and the how come of them. Or in other words, why should one want a round barn round? About the only thing we know about them now is that probably Robin Hood's wasn't, or it wouldn't take us, some of us so long to get around it. We shall be glad of any leads as to the history of round barns, which came out of a newsletter from the Vermont Department of Agriculture in the 1940s. So I hope we know a little bit more about round barns now than they did.
Lucy, there was only 2 exits to that barn down where you milked. And my father, all of us got a big joy out of, let's watch and see how many times they go around before they can figure out how to get out.
Get out.
all was very good, though. We had a good life and everything was good, and thank you for doing all of this.
Well, thank you for being here. This has been fun listening to you.
Do I need a microphone?
Nope.
We'll see.
Not right now, anyway.
I'm going to make this quick because you've all sat here very patiently and participated, but I did have the question, the last slide was why have round barns? Got any farmers here?
Of course we do. We're the ones that say no.
No, I suspect there's a few. Why would you have a round barn?
To be different. right?
Because it's different.
I think it's efficiency in some manner, shape,
The
or
heads
form.
are closer together?
Efficiency?
Yeah.
That was it. The theory at the time,
To bring them closer together.
Feeding and.
late 1800s, industrial efficiency was a focus, and agricultural colleges were promoting these new designs. And the idea was that greater volume and surface area made them cheaper to build. Okay, so you're not having to build these corners up here that you don't use, you build just this. If that was true, we'd all have dome-shaped houses. But at the time, this is what they were promoting. Being able to go around, construction was simplified, they said, because you didn't have to build all the infrastructure of a rectangular building. You could build these arches going up. Structural stability, out in the Midwest, they had lots of winds, and they said these things withstood the wind better. And in interior layout was thought to be more efficient for farmers because they could work in a continuous direction. You guys were talking about bringing the cows in, and even though they couldn't find their way out, they only had one direction to go in, right? And labor-saving techniques in this period before mechanization were motivational. So this is the big theory of colleges. If someone went to an agricultural college, they'd find out about these round barns. People started adopting them as designs, and Parker and Davis were about that time. They talk about round barns with octagonal and other rounded barns. Octagonal were popular from 1850 to 1900, round barns from 1890 to 1936, early 1920 was the end. George Washington built a 16-sided barn in 1793.
Oh, I just saw that, like last week. I visited my daughter in Alexandria, and I saw that barn.
And the Shaker community built one in Massachusetts in 1826, built a real round barn. So even though they call them round barns, often they're octagonal or 16-sided. A true round barn, they're a little bit rarer. And so these things were very popular for a while. They were being built all over the country as a new way of farming. Why did they stop building them? That didn't work.
Gutter cleaner?
Right. The material, someone said the tracks weren't built for round barns, and plus they had developed, they were developing all kinds of machinery for farms, and they were building mainly for traditional farms. So these things, and the machinery made up for any advantage that you were going to get from having this round barn. So with the new machinery they keep brought into farming, there was no sense in this, and their efficiency really hadn't been proven. You know, it was a neat idea, and they did them. So this unique part that gets pointed out about our round barn is the gambrel roof, and that's this compared to, there's one down at Shelburne Farm, Shelburne Museum, with a traditional roof. What John Eno kind of pointing out is that this is one of the only ones with this gambrel roof in Vermont, perhaps in the country.
Now, Jim, in one of the pictures that I remember seeing that you had at the beginning, the round barn was actually what, that color there when it started. It was not yellow, it was
Right,
red.
one of the slides Lucille said,
It is
talked
red.
about all the buildings being painted red. So this was, and these are the same information that were in Lucille's slides, it's just that this was an ad from the Shippensburg Chronicle in 1909. Takes less material to build and is more convenient. There are no cross beams except those in supporting the floor above the cows, so nothing's in the way when storing hay. The separator power room is located behind the inclined road leading to the upper doors. A manure shed is in the back. Economy of lumber and convenience in the feeding and our claim for round barns. So these were the ads that were out at that time. This is the same picture of the inside showing that there's nothing, no other infrastructure.
See, there it's done.
This is the same information, who was it, Harry Pearl sent this in? But this was the same information sent into, so this stuff was being published in agricultural magazines nationwide. So this is what people were reading about with the current trends in agriculture. 1963, this is a survey of round barns in Vermont, and it's counting on polygonal barns too. And about half of them are circular and half of them are, there's a 10-sided one, 16-sided, Waitsfield is 8-sided, Waitsfield is a 12-sided one, and so at that time they could count 24 barns at this time, and about half of them were round. John Hanu, do you think that's how it's pronounced?
I think it's Hanau.
Hanu? He jumped into this a couple of weeks ago, last month, and started posting on our Facebook page. And he's somewhat of an expert on round barns. He's published several books on them. And so here's one on round and multi-sided barns in Vermont, New Hampshire, Quebec, North American history, Indiana, Illinois. And he has become very interested in what the status is of this. And here he points out, he has lots of quotes on the Facebook page, you can see those, but I try to cut out the parts that made this. A lot of repeats the history of round barns, the history of our round barn. But the unique history is one of 5 true circular barns that were built and promoted extensively during their day. They started as so-called round barn craze at peak in construction, starts during the early 1910s. The other barns are the 1889 barn in Wisconsin. 3 barns that were built on the University of Illinois Urbana campus. D.J. Parker was the manager of the farm, and thanks to his promotional efforts, the round barn became one of the most famous barns of its day. And it talks about it being added to the historical register, but not the National Historic Register because of the changes made to the windows. And here he talks about the history. So now we know this round barn is the Davis Edwards barn, not just the Davis. He's talking about that they were both influential people that were forward-thinking and had a lot of influence in their area. And this, of all the early period barns, the Grand Isle structure is perhaps outstanding. Mr. Whitney, and this is from Mr. Whitney in an article, by today's standards of dairying, the round barn is not very practical. Its maintenance is very expensive. In a year or so, perhaps only 10 will be left from the era of barrel barns. But there's something about a round barn that seems to belong to Vermont. His prediction is more or less true that only 5 of these so-called true circular barns remain in the state of Vermont. And one of the pictures Lucille showed of the purloins being truly round, that's a very unique feature. That it's actually built round on the inside. And this is, John is promoting, trying to preserve this property, and he gives a list of reasons here why it should be preserved. This is not our opinion, this is his opinion. Okay. And the barn's 124 years, that's an era, it's 122 years old. It's an American artifact and testament to historical agriculture, vernacular architecture. There's no other round barn like this one, and only one of it's still in existence. It goes to the 4 round barns that were created to promote round barns. They're the most celebrated round barns in Vermont. One of the first true circular barns with a pitch gambrel roof ever built in northern America. True circular barns that have slate roofs. And one time it had 76 round barn and multi-sided barns, only 12 remain. And of the 12 barns that remain, 5 are true circular in shape. And the only one with a pitch gambrel roof is the Davis Parker barn. And he goes on to talk about in all of North America what the trends are. And some other things. One of the first true round barns that laminated circular purlin plate to secure the barn and the roof rafters. And the gambrel roof again. So he's recently been very active in promoting, trying to preserve the property. And then 2 days ago, there was an article in the Vermont Digger putting out some of the same information about the history of the barn, and then what currently is going on with it, what the developers are thinking of doing with it. And so they say they're thinking of moving it. If we all grab a corner, maybe.
A lot of shakers.
So So this was in Vermont Digger 2 days ago, and talks about who owns it and what the plans are coming up with it. So we're not sure what will happen, but we just thought for, more information about round barns in general and our particular one would be helpful. End of show.
Build a barn like that now?
No?
We won't familiar.
Thank you, and I apologize, I've got to go to work.
Thank you, Bill. Before you go, over on the table are some pictures. John Hano's book is over there too.